Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us once again, Rick Ackerman. I was reading this guy's years ago before I ever started reporting on the economy. He's got his website, rickackerman.com. He is a trader and a forecaster, and thus he has a special section called Rick's Picks. Rick Ackerman, thank you so much for joining us today from beautiful Colorado.
Great to be here. It is beautiful, too. All the snow is melted away.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the Federal Reserve meeting last week where they came out with this weird, trying to be coy language where they say we could increase or reduce quantitative easing, but yet all the analysis is from the Fed is saying, well, you know, Washington is so dysfunctional, we're going to have to increase QE. What's your take on this ridiculous statement where they're being coy, where they can increase or reduce, their words, quantitative easing, the $85 billion a month?
Either way, it's an absurdity because we're already pushing on a string. You know, we can see that the Fed has generated a little bit of a housing boomlet, but housing prices, the increase has been way outstripping incomes, which have been stagnant. So that is as much as defining a bubble. But as far as any idea that the Fed is going to somehow get off the easing regimen, it's not possible, to even begin to think about subjecting a quadrillion-dollar derivatives edifice to even a few more basis points of VIG. You kill the system right now. We can't afford an uptick in interest rates. We can't afford the interest rate sensitive markets to be subject to true market forces. So there's whatever they say, there's not going to be any change in the easing regimen.
I talked to Jim Rogers in Singapore last week or week before last, and he was saying, well, if they keep printing money, it's going to be a disaster. And if they stop printing money, it's going to be a disaster. I'm paraphrasing. Either way, it's going to be a disaster. What's your take on this? When does this thing, at some point, either they stop or they continue, things blow up, don't they?
Yeah, I agree. There's no way out right now. And although we've put off a day of reckoning, it can't be put off indefinitely. There are a couple places where the real economy is going to impact on that calculus. Number one, in the public sector, where you have a lot of pension and health care plans that have the potential to bankrupt the tax-paying part of the economy, something's got to give, really, because even though there are no legal precedents for reneging on these pension contracts, essentially, we're getting there. With the bankruptcy of Stockton, the judge has more or less cleared the path to allow Stockton to make smaller contributions to CalPERS. And to me, this is where it all ends. There's just not enough money to pay out these pensions. And but on the other hand, the recipients are legally entitled to them right now.
Well, they're maybe legally entitled to it, but you can't get blood out of a rock, I guess, the old saying goes.
Let me give you an example. The city of Flint has basically cut out everything. There's no library. There's barely any police or fire. And that is to deal with a cyclical recurring deficit on the order of $10 million or so. But if you look at the big enchilada, essentially their long-term obligations coming from pensions and health care benefits promised their employees, it's $600 to $700 million. And of course, the number is bigger for Detroit and far bigger still for New York. So all these things are going to precipitate out. And, we've got the private sector working its butt off to support public sector retirees who are calling it quits at age 55 on 80 or 90% of their peak salary with these benefits. So really, this is the most immediate thing that's going to bring the whole house of cards tumbling down.
Well, I tell you, I don't understand how people in the public sector get free health care for life. They get a pension. Oh, and they get contributing 401k in many cases. Who gets that in the private sector? Nobody does. This is unbelievable. It's outrageous. Well, let's move on to the unemployment report last week. Well, we're down to 7.5%, but the numbers are suspect. We supposedly gained 165,000 jobs. but less hours are being worked, according to analysis on Zero Hedge. They actually gained employment but paid out less money, corporate America. I guess part of that is the companies moving to 29-hour employees, so they don't have to pay Obamacare. And I want to get into what's your take on the labor market going forward, and also the Obamacare impact. It's not going to be good, is it? Like they say, everybody's going to get health care. It's going to be nirvana. But what do you say?
Well, I think Obamacare will be a crushing burden on the economy. And really, anything you see, any statistic that comes your way, we can see the stock market's going to take it, whether it's good or bad, and it's just going to go higher. It doesn't matter what the news is, but I think that if you look around, I know, just looking at my own friends, everybody's working pretty hard just to keep their heads above water, and it's not like the economy's going great guns. There is some question as to whether the increase in employment is generating the kind of jobs that will make this country prosperous once again. And, of course, there's some doubts that that's the case. The employers, as you're suggesting, are going to be very careful about pushing their costs up at the margin by, for one, being a 50-employee company. I talked to a guy yesterday, just someone I do business with, and he is close to that threshold where he could have 50 employees. But he said, when you get to 50, it's a whole new game tax-wise. So this is going to have an enormous impact on the economy going forward.
So he's not hiring your friend. He's not going to go past 50.
He doesn't know what to do, really. I mean, he's at the point where the growth really would seem to require going over that 50-employee threshold, but it's going to be very expensive for him. And if you pay, you're self-employed, so you pay for health insurance, and we've had enormous increases in our premiums in the last year, but it's already baked in the cake here that as of January 1st, everybody is going to get socked with at least a 30% increase in their insurance premiums, and it might go to 100% or more. So these things have yet to kick in, and we're still talking about setting up these insurance exchanges. Some of the states are rejecting them to their credit, but to me, everything in Obamacare is sort of following out from this Wall Street Journal editorial of a year and a half ago that said it was the worst bill ever. It was, it still is, and I don't see how the economy can survive it.
I think the Democrats, Harry Reid, Max Baucus in Montana, stepping down. Harry Reid says it's going to be a train wreck if not implemented correctly or well or whatever his terminology. Train wreck is the thing I heard. And I think the Democrats are starting to freak out a little bit, but what kills me is that they're working on immigration, they're working on gun bills. What are they doing? What are you doing?
Well, you can see all their efforts paying off in the approval ratings, which are down there. I think the Boston bomber would probably do better polling on how am I doing?
Yeah, yes, I know. Let's you are exposed to the market. I want to ask you this because you are a trader, you're a forecaster, and you're exposed to the stock market. You have money, I'm sure, in brokerage accounts, things like that. What's your fear about these bail-ins, about people trying to exit the market in a panic? I mean, what are you doing? Do you have a fear? If you do, what are you doing to protect yourself?
Well, I think I suggest, and this is something I do for myself, that you keep a shoebox full of 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s around besides any physical gold that you may hold. I'm not on board really for gold at $5 or $10 or $20,000 an ounce because it implies a short squeeze mechanism that the regulators won't enforce. Essentially, that would be wiping out the big players, the bullion bankers who make all their money on the short side of gold. It's inconceivable to me that the regulators are going to say, okay, J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, you guys have to pay up. You better cough up some real gold. That'll never, ever happen. On the other hand, one thing I've always been absolutely confident about is that gold, relative to any other asset you can think of, will hold its purchasing power. I put farmland at the top of the pyramid, and there's a question, if gold blows up, will you be able to exchange your Krugerrands for farmland? But I don't think you can do better than that. There are actually ways to invest in Canadian farmland even now. So a shoebox full of money, 10 to 20% gold, and you need to be careful about owing money. You know, if you're in over your head, if you're underwater on your mortgage, you really need to somehow refinance, get your debt as manageable as possible.
So you think the bail-in, the global bail-in thing, where they're going to be taking assets, Jim Rogers, Mark Farber, big-time investors, and I know you've been on the net a long time. You've been with your website a long time, trading. You're successful at it, obviously. Do you have the same fear that there could be some confiscation of wealth for the next round of systemic failure, bail-ins as they're calling them, and not just in Cyprus, but Europe, in the U.S., Canada? A lot of people talking about basically, hey, we're going to take people's wealth to fix this problem.
It's a terrible problem, and you know that because it was only $13 billion to bail out Cyprus, that for the Europe to have sort of broken with precedent and saying, anything over 100,000 euros or whatever it is going to have to pay a price. They're all taking a haircut. Just to do a $13 billion bailout, you know that their backs up against the wall at this point. So yes, anybody all depositors everywhere should be scared for their money. It's like, but where do you put it? And the answer is, there's no safe haven anymore. If you can't put money in a bank above the level of 100 grand, then where are you going to put it? So it should have spooked the whole world, and it did. And I think that it makes the likelihood of some black swan event even greater.
Rick Ackerman, rickackerman.com. Thank you, my friend, for sharing your thoughts and your ideas on usawatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here.